Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take your source material, no matter how dense or unexpected, and find the critical insights buried within. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're not diving into, market volatility or the latest biotech breakthroughs. We are diving into a classic piece of literature, but we're viewing it with the rigorous analytical detachment of a scientific case study.
That's right. Our sources today are extensive excerpts from Frances Hodgson Burnett's The Secret Garden. And we're really trying to move past the common perception of this as, just a simple children's story. We're approaching it as a foundational text in environmental psychology, childhood trauma, and even somatic healing. The sheer precision with which the text documents the character's physical and mental decline, and then their subsequent radical recovery, it turns the whole thing into a clinical record.
So we have a clear mission for this deep dive. We want to extract the core insights about how extreme isolation, and specifically the emotional and physical isolation that comes from neglect, is systematically overcome. We want to decode the role of connection, of curiosity, and, well, the raw, untamed force of climate and nature in generating tangible, verifiable health improvements.
Exactly. We're focusing on the dynamics of our main subject, Mary Lennox, the isolated, almost institutional setting of Misselthwaite, and this profound psychological shift we see, a shift away from what the text calls tyranny and deep-seated hysteria toward robust physical vitality.
It's an exploration of decay then, isn't it? Both internal and external, and the absolute physiological imperative of finding the right environment to reverse that decline.
We are treating Misselthwaite Manor less like a fictional setting and more like a controlled, albeit accidental, environmental rehabilitation center.
Okay, so let's unpack this initial state. The sources present it as this perfect, almost textbook study in neglect. We begin with Mary Lennox in India. The description is, well, it's remarkably clinical. It's almost a pathology.
It really is. She's a disagreeable-looking child, thin light hair and a sour expression, with a face that was yellow and sickly. And the text is very specific. It's not because of a particular disease, but because she had been born there and, quote, always been ill in one way or another.
That phrase is so telling. Always been ill in one way or another. It's not an event. It's the very condition of her existence. It just encapsulates this deep physical compromise.
Absolutely. And it's caused by her environment and her lifestyle. She was born to parents who, by their social design, were fundamentally unavailable. Her father was busy, holding a demanding position with the English government. And her mother.
The mother is described as a great beauty who cared only to go to parties. Mary was essentially an unwanted accessory.
Precisely. And the mechanism of her neglect is laid out in exact detail. She was immediately handed over to an ayah, a native nurse, with these strict, almost criminally negligent instructions. Keep the child out of sight as much as possible.
This is critical, isn't it? Because it establishes a power structure that's completely rooted in emotional deprivation.
It is. Since the servants were told to give Mary her own way in absolutely everything, specifically to avoid her crying or making a scene that would bother the mother, she never learned normal human interaction. There was no reciprocity, no mutual respect.
So by the time she's 6, the source states she was as tyrannical and selfish a little pig as ever lived.
Wow.
And we see the specific evidence of this. She's perpetually fretful and sickly, ruling her staff with these screaming tantrums.
And they obeyed her. They obeyed her out of duty and fear of their mistress's displeasure, not out of any affection. So she lacked the most basic socialization. This really sets the stage for her deep dysfunction. She's a person who commands, but has absolutely no idea how to connect.
And this whole life, this hollow existence of entitlement, is just shattered by the catalyst, the cholera outbreak.
A shocking catalyst. Mary sleeps heavily through the crisis, and when she finally wakes up, the house is just eerily silent. And her reaction to finding out her ayah is dead is, well, it's chilling.
She doesn't cry.
Not at all. Her concern is purely self-centered and practical. She wonders who will take care of her now, and then she thinks that maybe the replacement will know some new stories. Mary had been rather tired of the old ones.
That complete emotional detachment is just terrifyingly efficient. The source is so explicit about it. She did not cry because her nurse had died. She was not an affectionate child and had never cared much for anyone.
Her only real feeling was anger that nobody seemed to remember she existed. It speaks to this profound lack of emotional object permanence. People were just interchangeable functionaries to her.
So she's found by an English officer standing alone in the nursery, and she's essentially shipped off like cargo to her uncle in Yorkshire, Mr. Archibald Craven, a man she's never met whose existence is as shadowy as her own.
And her journey there immediately sets up this massive cultural and physiological clash. She meets Mrs. Medlock, the housekeeper, and Mary's reaction is instant distaste. She finds her disagreeable, with a common, highly colored face.
Right, which is just her ingrained snobbery and entitlement reacting to the rough, outspoken honesty of Yorkshire.
Then Mrs. Medlock gives it right back. She looks at Mary's sickly yellow face and just flatly states, "My word, she's a plain little piece of goods."
Yeah. And this blunt, non-servile assessment is Mary's first real exposure to an opinion that isn't engineered to please her.
Medlock's description of Misselthwaite Manor then positions it less as a refuge and more as a grand, gloomy prison.
She tells Mary she's going to a queer place, a grand, big place in a gloomy way, 600 years old. And the detail here really matters. The source specifies it has near 100 rooms in it, though most of them shut up and locked.
That detail about the locked rooms isn't just flavor, is it? It's the architectural manifestation of the family's trauma and secrecy. Exactly. A house that large, mostly sealed off, implies a deliberate, active avoidance of life. It's a mausoleum dedicated to past grief.
And the geography of its isolation is key, too. It sits on the edge of miles and miles and miles of wild land called the moor. It's vast, bleak, windy, the absolute antithesis of the hot, languid climate Mary has always known.
And that emptiness is dominated by the master of the house, Archibald Craven. He is the source of the manor's misery. We get precise details on his physical state, a crooked back, though the source implies his grief makes it worse. He's been consumed by sorrow since his wife died 10 years ago.
The ultimate recluse. He shuts himself up in the West Wing and rarely sees anyone. Mrs. Medlock lays it all out. Mr. Craven was a sour young man until he married a sweet, pretty thing who died, making him queerer than ever.
The entire system of the house is built around protecting the master's grief.
It creates this atmosphere of active absence, emotional sterility. The initial instruction to Mrs. Medlock about Mary is chillingly brief. Don't let him be disturbed and don't let him see what he doesn't want to see. So Mary is just told to play about and look after yourself, but with this one vague draconian rule, don't go wandering and poking about.
So the stage is perfectly set for a therapeutic confrontation. Mary's learned habits, her tyrannical demands, her reliance on heat, her languid, sickly movement are now pitted against this new reality. Cold, wind, vast emptiness, outspoken staff, and total unacknowledged freedom.
It's the ultimate environmental detox. In India, she had servants in that enervating tropical heat. Here, she has staff who talk back, northern cold, and a desolate house that demands action just to survive.
And that enforced isolation is, paradoxically, the first step toward her physical and mental renewal. She's been removed from the toxic ecosystem that created her.
Exactly. She's forced to rely entirely on her own resources, which, for a child like her, is a completely revolutionary concept. Okay, so here's where our analysis flips from pathology to treatment. The isolation that you'd think would crush a highly dependent child actually provides the necessary physiological shock to her system. And the first significant catalyst is the moor itself. It acts as this natural therapeutic agent.
And her initial reaction is pure repulsion. She looks out the window and just says, "I hate it." She thinks it's too big and bare.
It's a classic reaction, isn't it? When you're used to contained, highly structured, warm spaces, that kind of vastness is threatening.
It is. But then we introduce Martha, the housemaid, who acts as the human bridge to this new environment. Martha's a Yorkshire moor woman, and she fiercely defends her home. She contrasts Mary's perception of barrenness with these rich sensory details. She says it's fair, lovely in spring and summer, covered with heather and gorse and broom, and it smells of honey. And crucially, she emphasizes the air. It is full of such a lot of fresh air.
And the sources are fantastic here because they document the physical mechanism of Mary's improvement with almost clinical precision. She starts going outside not out of appreciation, but out of sheer necessity. If she did not go out, she would have to stay in and do nothing, and that was worse.
So she runs. She runs only to make herself warm, but the result is this unwitting climate-induced behavioral modification.
The text describes the physiological imperative at work.
It does. It says the big breaths of rough, fresh air blown over the heather filled her lungs and whipped some red color into her cheeks and brightened her dull eyes when she did not know anything about it. This wasn't a choice. It was a physical response to a harsh, healthy climate. The cold air forced her circulatory system into action, shedding that languid, yellowish, passive state from India.
And she develops an appetite, which is a complete shock to Mrs. Medlock and the staff. Martha gives her this blunt diagnosis, doesn't she? You go on playing you out of doors every day and you'll get some flesh on your bones and you won't be so yeller. So this physical necessity to keep warm, to eat, it becomes the foundation for her psychological progress.
And we really need to linger on Martha's influence. She is Mary's first true experience of non-servile, honest human interaction. Martha's sturdy way and her broad Yorkshire dialect, like Canada dress Dyson, it just shocks Mary. She's used to staff dressing her, carrying her. Martha's refusal to be subservient forces Mary to perform basic human tasks. It teaches her self-sufficiency.
That culture clash is a pivotal moment in her social education. And Martha's family, the Sowerbys, they embody this healthy, bustling, resilient life that Mary has completely missed out on. Martha describes her little cottage, 12 children living on almost nothing, yet the mother says the air of the moor fattens them.
It's a profound contrast. The wealth and comfort of Misselthwaite have bred sickness and misery, while the poverty and hardship of the moor, when combined with the right environment, produce resilience and strength.
And that resilience leads us directly to the introduction of Dickon.
Yes, Dickon, the central figure connecting Mary to the natural world. Martha describes her 12-year-old brother as a kind lad whom animals just naturally trust. He has wild pets, a pony, sheep, birds, because he makes friends with it. And Mary, who has never had a pet and only ever commanded servants, feels a new sensation. A slight interest in Dickon.
And here's the psychological nugget. The source defines this shift as the dawning of a healthy sentiment. For the first time, she is curious about someone other than herself, specifically about Dickon's unusual, gentle relationship with the wild. This curiosity is the genesis of purpose outside the self.
It is. It's the moment she transitions from a state of total narcissistic self-absorption to one of potential empathy. She needs Dickon because Dickon understands the things she is now becoming dependent on. The more.
And the first tangible clue about the manor's secrets comes through Martha, too. Seeing Mary's new curiosity, she opens up a bit. She reveals the source of Mr. Craven's misery, his wife's death, which led him to lock up her favorite garden, bury the key, and forbid anyone to enter.
And that locked garden instantly provides Mary with an intense, singular focus. It gives her a concrete quest. This purpose manifests physically. Martha gives her a skipping rope, and Mary, fueled by the fresh air and this new goal, starts skipping until her cheeks are quite red. The source says it's putting child's blood in thy veins instead of sour buttermilk. The physical effort is directly linked to the psychological relief of having a goal.
And the final piece of this section is her interaction with Ben Weatherstaff, the grumpy old gardener. This is another layer of that blunt, necessary Yorkshire honesty. He's crusty, calls her out instantly, says she looks sour as we look, and is a nasty-tempered little wench.
And this is the first time in her life she hears the blunt truth about her own demeanor from an equal, or at least a non-subservient adult. It makes her uncomfortable. And that discomfort is essential. It's the precursor to self-awareness.
But Ben, despite his surliness, he also acts as the messenger of hope. He has this involuntary friendship with a robin, calling it the only friend I've got. And the robin, who is highly sociable, flies over the high wall and instigates Mary's physical search for the garden door.
The robin is almost a spirit guide here. It represents the vitality Mary is seeking. And when Mary asks Ben if the roses inside the locked garden are dead, Ben's wisdom becomes the central metaphor for their entire journey. He says, wait till the spring gets at them, wait till the sun shines on the rain, and the rain falls on the sunshine, and then they'll find out.
Which is the instruction for resilience, right? It's not just about the sun, the joy. It's the combination of the difficulty, the rain, and the warmth that facilitates growth.
Exactly. It instills hope and demands patience and active engagement. Mary takes this advice literally and starts working her own small, neglected patch of ground, pulling weeds. And she feels actually happy for the first time in her life.
So by the end of this section, she's established this core group of connections, a sort of healthy social ecology. She realizes she likes Martha, Dickon, the robin, Ben Weatherstaff, and the garden. She's no longer passive or tyrannical. She has physical activity, a burgeoning internal life, and a singular, burning curiosity that drives her every move. She's ready for the next layer of the Misselthwaite mystery. So just as Mary's life turns outward toward the healthy chaos of the moor, her focus is pulled right back inside by the house's second major secret. While she's listening to the wind wuthering, that deep, hollow, shuddering roar you only get in a vast old manor, she begins to hear something else. Something that sounds almost as if a child were crying somewhere.
And this is a remarkable piece of the source material because it immediately establishes the institutional denial in Misselthwaite. When Mary asks about it, Martha just tries to dismiss it. Oh, it's the wind, or it's Betty Butterworth, the scullery maid, with a toothache. It highlights the absolute mandated secrecy the staff maintain about any disturbance that might alert Mr. Craven or reveal the truth.
But Mary is convinced. It is someone crying, and it isn't a grown-up person. The sound is faint, far off, muffled by all those rooms.
Suggesting immense physical distance or, deep concealment.
Huh.
It happens twice, and Mary, who is now fueled by her new sense of agency and a rebellious mood, she decides she has to investigate. Her curiosity has evolved from passive interest into active rebellion.
She embarks on this clandestine exploration of the massive labyrinthine house. It's a critical psychological moment.
It is. The source describes her navigating these long, empty corridors, going up short flights of steps, surrounded by portraits of long-dead ancestors. She feels completely alone in this huge, rambling house, which only amplifies the tension. She's applying her new physical strength from running on the moor to solve a mental riddle.
And her wanderings bring her to a short passage with a tapestry wall. She hears the sound again, a fretful, childish whine muffled by passing through walls. But this time, it's nearer than it was. She follows it, pushes the tapestry aside, finds a door, and slips into the hidden room. The isolation of Misselthwaite is now broken by Mary's audacity.
And there it is, the profound unveiling of Colin Craven. She finds him in this enormous room with ancient furniture, lying in a carved four-posted bed. He is strikingly ill-looking, ivory white, terrified, with these agate gray eyes that look way too large for his face. This is her cousin, Master Colin Craven, the hidden heir to Misselthwaite.
The boy who was supposed to be kept out of sight, whose very existence was a strictly guarded secret. Colin is the physical and emotional manifestation of all of Misselthwaite's grief. He's been kept hidden, catered to, indulged, and he believes he is going to die.
And Mary immediately understands the power dynamic. She sees he's a young Raja, where everyone is obliged to do what pleases me.
That term Raja is fascinating. Mary, having just come from the colonial system of India, she instantly recognizes the parallel. Colin is a tyrant of his own domain, a sickly, demanding autocrat, just as she used to be. But now she's seeing it from the outside.
Exactly. And his central, debilitating fear is physical. He is terrified of becoming a hunchback, mirroring his father's perceived deformity. And this fear is systematically reinforced, possibly deliberately, by the structure of the house. He explicitly reveals that his doctor, who is his father's poor cousin, stands to inherit Misselthwaite if Colin dies.
Which creates an immediate, though unspoken, conflict of interest that just fuels Colin's hysteria. He's surrounded by people who have a vested interest in keeping him sick, or at least in accepting his impending death. The isolation has made him entirely self-obsessed and profoundly hysterical. He uses illness as a weapon of control.
But when Mary barges in, that dynamic changes instantly. He's terrified, whispering, "Are you a ghost?" But her bold, honest presence, the first equal, non-servile person he's ever met, it just shatters his constructed reality. They immediately connect over the house's queer atmosphere, recognizing that everything is a kind of secret at Misselthwaite.
And this shared secrecy is the foundation of their therapeutic alliance. And crucially, they connect over the one thing Mary is obsessed with, the locked garden. Colin demands to know about it, threatening to use his power as the Raja to make them tell me if he lives. He wants to break the secrecy by force and entitlement.
But Mary, having learned the value of earned secrets through her own labor on the moor, she makes this crucial maneuver. She suggests keeping the garden a secret between them.
She doesn't just suggest visiting it. She paints this picture of exclusivity and co-ownership, framing it as a defiant act against the adult world. And we could slip through it together and shut it behind us, and no one knew anyone was inside, and we called it our garden and pretended that we were missel thrushes and it was our nest.
This magic idea, as the book calls it, it appeals perfectly to Colin's need for control, but it redirects it, away from self-destructive tyranny to a shared, life-affirming purpose. And he accepts immediately. I should like that. I should not mind fresh air in a secret garden. It transforms the terrifying outside world, the more he's been told will kill him, into a protected, shared space of belonging.
And the final piece of the mystery, the link between the trauma and the isolation, is confirmed here. Colin shows Mary his mother's portrait, which is kept curtained, and the reason: she smiles too much when I'm ill and miserable.
The mother's memory, associated with the locked garden and health, is literally too bright for Colin's dark, self-pitying existence. Mary, now linked to the garden and his mother's memory, becomes the agent of light.
So the dynamic is set. Two neglected children, both damaged by profound isolation, forge a secret alliance centered on a patch of earth that symbolizes the health they've both been denied. The transformation is about to begin.
Okay, so this is the section where the sources become, well, almost a detailed manual on somatic and psychological recovery. The reversal of decay begins not with medicine, but with a psychological confrontation. Colin, still prone to acting the spoiled Raja, threatens to banish Dickon after Mary describes him. This forces Mary into what the source calls a fine passion.
And Mary's passion is critical here because it represents the healthy use of her previously toxic temper. She refuses to cater to his tyranny, she fiercely contradicts his claims of dying, and in a fit of rage, a sign of her newfound vitality, calls him a nasty Raja who only says he's dying for attention. She challenges his most entrenched, debilitating belief. This verbal explosion triggers the climactic hysterical fit. Colin screams, "I felt the lump, I felt it," confirming his central, consuming fear about becoming a hunchback. But Mary, having found her own courage on the moor, she holds her ground and just shouts the clinical truth back at him. "Half that ails you is hysterics and temper, just hysterics, hysterics, hysterics," and demands the nurse examine him immediately.
The nurse, completely astonished by this confrontation, is forced to physically examine his back. When she confirms there was no lump there, this moment of objective clarity, forced by Mary's savage intervention, provides Colin with curious, great relief. The breakthrough is profound.
And it confirms the London doctor's earlier ignored diagnosis, doesn't it? The lad might live if he would make up his mind to it, put him in the humor. Mary's temper, channeled correctly, broke the feedback loop of self-pity and entitlement that had physically manifested as hysteria.
The momentum shifts instantaneously toward life. Colin, now acknowledging he feels better, issues new orders, but these are for healthy engagement. He orders Mary to come and talk to him every day and insists she talk about living things, particularly Dickon.
And Dickon's arrival is the next major step. It's about introducing the vital life force of the moor into the manor's dead atmosphere. Dickon visits Colin's room, bringing a collection of living creatures: a little red fox, the crowsoot, squirrel's nut and shell, and most powerfully, a newborn lamb he found on the moor.
It's an invasion of pure, unadulterated nature. Colin is just overwhelmed, staring with wonder and delight, and it culminates in this moment of pure realization. He's a sort of animal charmer, and I am a boy animal. The warmth of the lamb on his lap, a physical, living, non-human comfort, is the perfect antidote to years of cold isolation and manufactured misery.
The physical evidence of change starts immediately. Both children begin to eat voraciously, they're constantly hungry, and their increased appetites perplex Mrs. Medlock and the nurse. They cannot understand why a boy who previously threw tantrums at the mere mention of fresh air now stays out of doors from morning until night.
This hunger is a direct, quantifiable measurement of their returning health, fueled by purpose and clean air. The source notes their appetite is so fierce that they worry about giving away their secret. So they resort to this elaborate deception, secretly consuming Mrs. Sowerby's bounties: good new milk, crusty cottage bread, and buns delivered by Dickon and eaten in the garden.
They realize that if they ask for more of that hearty food inside, they won't believe he's an invalid at all. The necessity of secrecy becomes a tool for maintaining their recovery, allowing them to control the narrative of their own health away from the cynical gaze of the adults.
And their ability to ingest and crave such basic, sustaining food, milk, and bread is a complete reversal of the sickly, delicate palates they previously had. Their bodies are literally demanding the fuel required for their new active lives.
The third major therapeutic development is the introduction of physical activity under the guise of secrecy. Dickon learns strength-building exercises from Bob Harroworth, the champion wrestler, and he teaches Colin these movements, which they perform secretly in the empty corridors, or eventually, the garden.
This is the scientific backbone of the transformation. Their atrophied muscles are being rebuilt not by tedious therapy, but by joyous, secretive play. The sources even inject this moment of playful observation, noting the robin watches them perform these strange movements in the garden, reasoning that since Dickon is doing it, the actions were not of a dangerous nature. Nature itself is observing and approving of their recovery.
Their improving health soon makes the continued deception almost impossible. Colin confesses to Mary, "I can't stand lying still and pretending, and besides, I look too different." They're plumping up, and they laugh till they've no breath left to laugh with in the garden, only remembering to put on their helpless-looking, invalid faces just before they get back to the house. The effort of deceit becomes greater than the effort of being healthy.
And meanwhile, the parallel transformation of Mr. Craven is unfolding across Europe. For 10 years, he's been traveling, trying to cope with his dark and heartbroken thinking. He felt he poisoned the air about him with gloom. and was entirely focused on death and loss.
But the relentless gloom slowly begins to lift in this subtle environmental shift. He's sitting by a stream in the Austrian Tyrol and finds himself looking tenderly at blue forget-me-nots, thinking how lovely it was. This small, involuntary appreciation for life, for a simple flower, is described as a sweet, clear spring that had begun to rise in a stagnant pool and swept the dark water away.
This environmental change in his own mind prepares him for the ultimate spiritual return. While sitting by the Lake of Como, he falls into a real dream. He hears his dead wife's voice, sweet and clear, call his name. Archie! Archie! In the garden! The trauma that locked the garden is now calling him back to it.
He awakens with a strange lightness and immediately receives a letter from Susan Sowerby, Martha and Dickon's mother, urging him to return home for his own good. The timing is crucial. The spiritual calling is immediately affirmed by this practical, matriarchal wisdom.
He stops at Susan Sowerby's cottage, the center of moorland health, and is greeted by her large, healthy brood of 8 children who tell him Dickon is at the manor. He sees the evidence of robust life right there and knows something profound is happening in Misselthwaite.
So Mr. Craven returns to Misselthwaite and finds Mrs. Medlock utterly mystified. She reports that Colin's appetite is past understanding, and he is growing very peculiar because he stays in the garden all day, though no one can look at him. She can't comprehend health disguised as secrecy.
The climax is just the perfect dramatic representation of a complete psychological and physical reversal. Colin and Mary hear his father is back, and they plan a dramatic surprise. Kellen, now fully standing and running, races Mary through the secret garden door.
Mr. Craven arrives just outside the garden entrance, still trying to grasp the situation, when the door bursts open. He is confronted by a tall boy and a handsome one, glowing with life, the color sent leaping to his face from the exertion of running.
And here is the profound instant recognition that signifies the breaking of that 10-year spell of grief. The boy lifts his head, and Mr. Craven gasps for breath, recognizing the pair of strange gray eyes, eyes full of boyish laughter and rimmed with black lashes like a fringe. They are exactly like his late wife's, but now they're infused with living joy, not mournful memory.
And Colin, full of this exuberant, healthy emotion, declares, "Father, I'm Colin. You can't believe it. I scarcely can myself. I'm Colin." He then attributes his recovery specifically, detailing the entire prescription. It was the garden that did it, and Mary and Dickon and the creatures and the magic. The entire system of psychological and environmental recovery is validated in one moment.
The spell is broken. Mr. Craven embraces his son, who is now well. The secrecy is over because the illness that required the secrecy is gone. The psychological and environmental recovery is complete, culminating in the family unit being reunited in the one place they had all been running from. #outro.
What a transformation. I mean, when we review the sources, the core nuggets of knowledge for you, the learner, are crystal clear. The absolute necessity of environment, the physiological requirement of physical activity, and the power of purpose as a cure for psychological distress.
Precisely. We see Mary's tyrannical temperament and Colin's physical hysteria overcome by 2 simple, interconnected factors: the more air and purposeful physical activity, the skipping, the weeding, the wrestler's exercises. The sources show us the climate literally acted as a tonic. The wind whipped some red color into her cheeks and brightened her dull eyes. The climate forced Mary to shed her habits of sickness.
And her purposeful labor digging and weeding made her actually happy for the first time.
And for Colin, the shift was profound. He moved from internal, debilitating fear focusing obsessively on death and the lump to external, absorbing curiosity. He was transformed from an invalid Raja demanding attention to a boy animal, focused entirely on the palpable, living hope of watching for buds to break on the rose bushes.
That clinical shift from internalized fear to external focus is the absolute key to their recovery. They externalized their health by caring for the garden. They moved their center of self-worth from controlling people, through tyranny and hysteria, to coexisting with nature, nurturing the garden, loving the creatures.
The comparison between the 2 fathers is a fascinating nugget as well. Mary's father was too busy to see her. Colin's father was too overwhelmed by grief to see him. Both resulted in radical neglect. And who was the true expert on correcting this decade of neglect? Susan Sowerby, who had raised 12 healthy children on the moor. She saw immediately that Mary needed liberty and fresh air and romping about. Her blunt, simple environmental advice was infinitely more valuable than Dr. Craven's cautious, internally conflicted professional diagnosis.
It raises a critical question for our analytical framework, though. Is the garden the source of the magic, or is it simply the excuse the children needed to initiate physical activity, providing them with the psychological cover, the shared secret, for their own agency? They needed a reason to exert themselves, and the secret locked garden provided that powerful incentive.
That's a wonderful distinction, and it brings us to the meaning of magic. The children use the term constantly. When Colin is standing and running, he declares, "The magic is in me." It's not a passive external force.
And Susan Sowerby and Dickon provide this non-supernatural, physiological definition of the magic.
They do. Dickon calls it the big good thing. Susan Sowerby explains it as the inherent unstoppable life force of nature. The same thing has set the seeds swelling in the sunshine and made the well lad. It's the combination of fresh air, purpose, the need to feed the creatures and care for the plants, and crucially, a positive mental attitude, actively letting go of dark thoughts.
The transformation is fundamentally underpinned by that powerful statement from the source that elevates mental state to physical health. Thoughts, just mere thoughts, are as powerful as electric batteries, as good for one as sunlight is, or as bad for one as poison. To let a sad thought get in is as dangerous as letting a scarlet fever germ get into your body.
So the healing required active exertion of the will. Mary and Colin didn't passively wait for a cure, they exerted their will, focusing on the palpable, living hope of the garden. They enforced strict boundaries. Colin explicitly states, "I won't have her finding out things no one must begin to find out yet." The secrecy and the shared effort were a form of psychological control over their own recovery, protecting their vulnerable new health from the cynicism of the outside world.
So what does this all mean for us, for you, the learner, living in a world of increasing urbanization and digital isolation? This deep dive suggests that the condition of our external environment is inextricably linked to our internal state. We are still physiological beings subject to the imperatives of fresh air and purpose.
It raises an important question you need to consider. How often do we, in our modern lives, allow the scarlet fever germ of sad thoughts, or the hysterics of manufactured fears, or even the sheer emotional vacuum of neglect to dictate our physical well-being? We retreat indoors, into climate-controlled familiar spaces when our bodies and minds are actually asking for the climate-induced behavioral modification of the more.
We spend so much time indoors, under artificial light, surrounded by the metaphorical 100 locked rooms of our professional or domestic lives. Perhaps the deepest dive is simply acknowledging what is locked away. What is our personal secret garden, that place of purpose, fresh air, and absolute non-tyrannical coexistence that we need to unlock and cultivate to force our own psychological reversal?
It's about finding that purposeful activity, that bit of earth Mary asked for. The magic is real, but as the source material demonstrates with such rigorous detail, it requires consistent, focused groundwork. You have to start skipping, you have to start weeding, and you have to start expecting things to live.
Excellent point. Thank you for guiding us through this amazing, profound transformation.
My pleasure.
And thank you for joining us for the deep dive. We'll see you next time.